Viking 1, Viking 2 in the 70s went to Mars. 19,000 images were captured from the orbiting part of the mission. The other craft landed on the surface, and I can just imagine being on the surface seeing this. It's like this thing is like a spider comes down a cloud of dust, and this little tube pops up, and some sticky dental floss stuff shoots out, and then they reel it in to collect dirt and microbes, and they reel it into broth because they're looking for evidence of life on Mars, and it's happening next to massive monuments and geometric structures that are now dated about 50,000 years BP, before present. So they're looking for microbes and signs of life next to the most massive signs of life that you could imagine.
These, you said they're dated to 50,000 BC, these structures?
BP,
before present.
Before present, yeah.
So how do they know that?
Those were when the Cydonia mission, that's the Cydonia scientists, are estimating 50,000 years, and the same with the Lunar. I'm hesitating.
But the Sidonian, how do they estimate that? If they're using probes from that far away?
They're using probes, and I think geologically they're using, it's relative dating. They're looking at strata and things like that. And from the lunar sites, they brought back samples. And yeah, I'm hesitating because I don't know how deep you want to go with all this. But
as deep as you want.
Well, the samples that came back from the lunar surface had traces of metals that do not occur naturally in nature. They are the product of advanced machinery. And
what metals are these?
These were metals that came back when they brought back from the Apollo mission, and I think they brought back. I don't even remember the names. That's one Jamie can look up. What the metals were that came back, and they don't know where those metals came from.
So is this metals from Cydonia, or is this metals from the moon?
This is from the lunar sites in the craters.
So the structures on the moon, how old they think they're the same age as the structures on Cydonia?
They're estimating 50,000 BP. There's a race for the moon right now, and I'm fascinated by this. There was a time only 2 nations on Earth had the money and the technology to go to the moon. It was the former Soviet Union and the former United States, because neither one's the same country anymore. And both those countries have been so broke, they haven't been able to do it. India and China are now sending the probes to the moon. We were going to the moon during the Cold War, and it was a crazy time. It was actually a very civilized war. I mean, the governments were at war, but the scientists were still cooperating. And there was an agreement that we would not share publicly what was found on the lunar surface. And Russia did the same thing. But China was never part of that agreement. So China has said when they land, they're going to televise live what they find on the lunar surface to the people of the Earth. My sense, Joe, and this will lead into a whole conversation we're going to have here, I think they'll find the archaeological structures that we know are there, that we've seen in the photographs, the inscriptions on those structures, we're going to be able to read, because there's a thinking that those structures are from ETs from another time, but the evidence suggests they're from us, from a time in our past, a cycle of civilization where we did great and beautiful things by working together until we destroyed one another through war, and that we're repeating that cycle again. So when they send...
Isn't that like drawing a lot of conclusions? Isn't there other possibilities for what happened to them?
Well, this is where I'm going with this. When they see what's on those temple walls, they're going to see inscriptions in languages that we already recognize. And that will be the smoking gun, like cuneiform.
Why do you think that?
Because this is what the researchers who are working on these projects right now, and they're combining this with so many of what the ancient texts have always told us. And this is where, it gets into a really a kind of a sticky conversation, because it depends on how, people interpret these things. I'm excited for it for this reason. This is obviously no ordinary time in the history of our world, and they're pushing for war. We're on the verge of global war. What would it mean if we found on the surface, on the lunar surface, evidence of us humans from another time, leaving a message in our own languages, cuneiform, Sanskrit, those kinds of things, it could be one of the most unifying factors right when we're on the precipice of war.